get stuck in all that.
Danielle, it's on.
You know,
Thank you.
I haven't been stuck yet. Well, I haven't been stuck where I needed it at all. Well, I've been stuck where I had to do. So who pulled you in? We have to call buyers or underwriters. But I had shoulder surgery last Thursday. So we did. Yeah, I haven't been all kind of emergency, but I had bolsters taken off, but they just, I used the grass and gravel, shake them off.
All lined up on the computer.
You probably got one of those in your place that works. You could just come up there.
I offered a guy that one of my friends that told me you could just do it.
Just the way to stay on today.
Save us all time to do this. I mean, not time to come in and all. It is.
Yeah.
Painful though.
I need to have just yeah.
Oh, good.
Because I remember going down.
I'm not supposed, I can drive my, I can't drive the truck. Well, if you had a crate, you had a steering wheel, yeah, that'd be terrible.
I haven't heard, so I assume you would.
Are we up and running again?
Yep, that's
Whenever you
going.
are.
I'm ready whenever you are.
It's going to work. Time is 4:30 p.m. The Pelican Rapids City Council meeting of February 22nd, 2022 is called to order. I'd ask at this time those in our council chambers, if you have not signed in, please sign the roster by the front door when you came in. Also, if you would put your cell phones on vibrate. Just a note, this evening at or around 5 p.m. we'll be having a public hearing for facilities plan for the 2024 water and sewer project. Roll call of members. Danielle?
Councilmember Steve Strand.
Here.
Councilmember Kevin Ballard.
Here.
Councilmember Kurt Markgraf. Absent. Councilmember Steve Foster is absent. And Mayor Brent Fraser.
Here. I want to welcome each and every one of you this evening here in the City Council chambers, also those that are watching the meeting on Zoom. And remember, our City Council meetings are shown on Wednesday evenings on Channel 14. I just have 3 announcements for the next couple of weeks. Tomorrow, Wednesday, February 23rd, at the Historic City Hall is conversations with the mayor from 10 to 11 a.m. On Saturday, March 5th, from 6 to 8 p.m. is the luminary walk to Pelican Rapids, which we'll hear more about later this evening. And then our next city council meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, March 8th at 4:30 p.m. Any other announcements? Any other announcements? Hearing none, if we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 2 is citizens' comments. Anyone here for citizens' comments? Anyone for citizens' comments? Okay, seeing none. Item number 3 is additions and deletions to the agenda. I have one deletion. It's item number 13, the Pelican Rapids Pool Committee minutes. Delete item number 13. Any other deletions or additions?
It looks a little
No, they aren't. I was looking through Move the agenda with the motion second. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Item number 4 is approval of consent agenda. Item 4A is approval of council minutes from February 8th, 2022. Item 4B is approval of accounts payable list. There was an additional sheet handed out that suggested 2 different other billings. Item 4C, one is staff reports from the liquor store, which was in your packet. Item number 4D is Pelican Rapids Ducks Unlimited Gambling Permit application for March 25th, 2022 at the VFW. Item 4E is the Village Shooting Club Incorporated Gambling Permit application for May 7th, 2022 at the VFW. Is there a motion to approve?
So move the resolution.
Second. Motion second. Discussion? Discussion? What's the motion?
13.
Well, that was
I'm sorry.
all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carried. Item number 5 is park board update, and we have, there are minutes in your packet for your review. We have Judy interested here to speak to us this evening. Judy?
Hi. As Brent said, the Luminary Walk is planned for March 5th, and I'm just kind of here to just sort of hit on some of the things with that and get your approval for everything. Hopefully it'll be nicer than the last couple weekends have been. So the trail this year, I don't know if any of you were there last year, but we kind of changed the trail a little bit. It goes from the far end of the Peace Trail, like last year, but then because now we have the new Midway Park and it's kind of gotten cleaned out quite a bit, we wanted to include that. And so rather than having 2 campfire pits in Veterans Park, we'll have 1 campfire pit there and then 1 over in the Midway Park area. And then we will be looping the trail around so it will go alongside the river, but it will go across Roger Schlesky's land and then behind the lumberyard and Gumringer's place. And of course we have gotten permission from all of those parties to route through there. And then it will just loop around and it can go back. We would like to have the Historic City Hall open like we did last year. It's kind of a nice place for people to warm up, or if somebody has an emergency, plus people like to wander around in there and look at things. And we'd like to use the bathrooms in there if there's not any problem with that.
Judy, do you recall who staffed that evening?
Last year, I think Adam Satterley did. This year, I'm going to. Last year, I was the runner and put 10 miles on, and I said, this year I'm not going to be the runner. I'll staff the Historic City Hall. If
Will be somebody from the park board.
Yep. And all the campfire pits will have a park board person staffing all of those. So, of course, they're all... Keith Gumringer's been kind enough to volunteer to give us the wood this year for the pits. And we'll be borrowing a lot of the stuff again from Maplewood Park for the luminaries. And stringing lights across the suspension bridge. That was really nice last year. Nobody went last year. You guys didn't go last year? Come on!
Yeah, it was a nice evening.
It was very nice. It was very nice. And we did little bags. We made little individual bags of stuff for s'mores so that when people stopped at the campfire pits, they could make s'mores. This year, the multicultural group is going to provide those packets and do all of that for. And then I think Local Foods, Local Places, Ellie Sears, you probably will know by now, is going to set up a little stand for hot cider by, that's the other difference in the route. We're going to go through the, rather than going down and across the little footbridge over the dam, which is nothing really much to look at now, and around, now that the farmer's market area is nice and has that little path through there, we're going to go through the farmer's market area. And so Local Foods, Local Places was going to maybe set up a stand for hot cider there. And of course, there's no cost to anybody for all of it. People really liked it last year. We had a lot of good comments about it.
Do you have any idea how many people attended last year?
No. I would say a couple hundred, maybe. A lot of family groups with small kids. Does anybody have any other questions? Did you get a map from Amy? Amy King was going to put together. Okay. of the route, yeah, for people to,
All around. She's maybe pending from her, so.
yeah. So,
For the historic city hall, did we ever get so that they can shut off the upstairs or lock off the upstairs? So
I don't know.
There's just a rope, well,
I think there's like a,
yeah, there's a rope down in the bottom.
something that goes across the
There's a
stairway.
door up above on the staircase, but, was there any issue with that? Is that something we don't worry about? I don't think so.
I don't think so, you know, nobody, there's no lights on up there, people, and like I said, I'll be in there, and so,
Okay, so Judy is looking for approval
right.
to use historic city hall.
Mhm.
Second. Motion
Okay,
second.
great.
Discussion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Okay, thanks, you guys, hopefully we'll see some of you there this year.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Item number 6 is local foods, local places. We have Ellie Lissinger here, and I remember there was this talk last council meeting before about the report, and that was emailed to all of us this afternoon. So Ellie, do you want to inform us regarding that report?
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for everybody's time for me to talk about the impact report. So, it's a 37-page report, so covering everything. I mean, that would take pretty much a couple hours here. So right now, I just want to share some highlights. So first things first, our volunteer statistics, which is on page 12. They do seem pretty low. I'm not going to deny that. There were 6 active volunteers who were able to do 3 hours on average per week for the 52 weeks between October 2020, when our program started, to the following October on 2021. But the volunteers the active volunteers we did have still worked incredibly hard to coordinate with the steering committee of local foods, local places. And we were also the Center for Small Towns internship that Lily Sugi had over the summer, and continued with us remotely during her work life as a student at University of Minnesota. Morris has helped us greatly coordinate social media aspects, and we are also lucky enough to get approved for the Minnesota Green Corps service, which is one of the reasons why I'm here. The next thing I want to highlight is success story. So first of all, one of our major success stories over the past year was Pelican Market. Thanks to Ryan Pesh and Lily Sugimura. Without them, the farmers and artisans in the area would not have an avenue to sell. At the end of the season, I surveyed customers and vendors about what could be improved at the farmers market, and the things that went well under their beliefs and their desires for the following markets. He's said, among other things, they desired access to electricity, the option to use WIC coupons or EBTs, and also activities for children to enjoy. Also, so according to the and their statistics, 100% of them would sell again during the next farmers market season. Then, let's see. Another success story I want to highlight is local foods becoming part of the comprehensive plan. I mean that's also thanks to the city council. So, the comprehend, but excuse me, but without the comprehensive plan, we would local foods, local places would not be part of the planning process, especially when it comes to how local foods can stimulate our local economy. Our big next success story, which is on page 20, is talk about at the commercial kitchen. And now it's still a work in progress, but we secured a location for it. A couple weeks ago, I met with Tim Thompson and Greg Larson of LREC. He discussed resources for the feasibility study. We hope to conduct that sometime in the next couple months or so. And a commercial kitchen would be a huge boon to our community, especially when it comes to food enterprise incubators that is also listed in our success plan, because without a commercial kitchen, where can people process their products safely for human food consumption without risking getting fined by the FDA? On page 29, I also wanted to highlight the news attention that local foods, local places efforts have had over the past years, from an article that featured Lily Sugimura at let's see, where was to and her farmers market to the video that WCI made that showed the virtual tour of Pelican Rapids at CNU U29, a major city planning conference. So,
Ellie, is this report going to be made public? I mean, is it like a copy of the library, printed copy, if you want?
So I put a digital copy on Pelican Market. It's about page. I'm also planning to contact Annie to see if there can be a physical copy made at the library. Yeah.
Council have any questions for Ellie?
I'm curious about the commercial kitchen. So would that be in addition to the one we'll probably do someday, or what?
Are you talking about the one that was in the works back in 2016, the upper levels of City Hall? Oh,
They're looking at one at the
Ye-
former senior citizens
yeah,
building.
The reason why the commercial kitchen has been selected as the reason why the old senior centers was selected as a viable location is because first of all, Meals on Wheels is still using the building to build their food, so there's already like plenty of kitchen access resources. And secondly, it's right next to the library, which is considered a huge multicultural resource in our town. So anybody who wanted to visit the library could learn about the commercial kitchen, and then they could learn how. Then they could come over to the old senior center to take cooking classes, learn about FDA, food standards, and the library would also be able to help us with stuff like that.
Well, we haven't decided what we're going to do with the building, right?
No.
So I seem like we should be talking together about this.
Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, after I had the conversation with Tim Thompson and Greg Larson, and he mentioned he was going to reach out to Don Solga, I think it was, about what the building would cost to outright buy it, especially since there's been talk about maybe creating into a commercial kitchen co-op. Like I said, that those plans are still in the works, but.
Yeah, the only conversations that I was contacted by Mr. Thompson, who was asking me about the use of community funds to do a feasibility study for a commercial kitchen, and that's where the conversation is at this point.
Yeah, the feasibility study is going to measure how many people we can have in the building, legally from a fire safety standpoint and a COVID-19 standpoint. Unfortunately, that's still going. And fingers crossed that winds down by the end of this year. It's also to measure what else needs to be done to make the commercial kitchen FDA approved, where ADA accessibility can be added. Because that's also a major thing when it comes to the senior center building. It needs to be ADA approved in order for it to have the commercial kitchen, and which makes sense. I mean, when for the U.S. adults have a disability in one kind or another, even if we don't always see it, and when those disabilities hamper people's ability to walk, or you need to use a wheelchair to get around.
Any other questions for Ellie? Any other questions? If not, thank you.
Yep, thank you for your time, and I hope that the City Council will continue to support local foods, local places in the future. If there was this much success in just 1 year of the program, imagine what would happen in 5 years or even 10.
Okay, thank you, Ellie.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Don, do we have enough time for item 10? Maybe? Okay.
That was something that was on last time, and you guys tabled it for this meeting. The discussion last time was basically, obviously, you approved Earhart separation out of the Pelican Rapids Community Fund. but there was still the need for potentially putting together a subcommittee made up of a couple of elected officials so that privacy nature could still be obtained or maintained until such a time as the EDC gets back running again to act as the advisory board. So they want to have a interim advisory board in case somebody does come with requests for community funds. And there is a request potentially coming, and unless there's an advisory board, there's no way to look at using community funds for anything. So we talked about potentially, there was guidelines and prospectuses and stuff in the packet last time, so you guys could review that stuff to get an idea of how the fund could be used, how the funds were established, that type of thing. But we talked about potentially, or was brought up, potentially having this as portfolios tied to a couple of councilmen, so it would be at the beginning of every year, a couple of councilmen could be put on as an advisory subcommittee or advisory committee when an EDC is inactive, because it seems like they're coming and going type thing. But something that would be set in place should the need arise that's kind of permanent in nature, so they could come to the city council and then possibly the administrator or somebody else be setting on it also, is what they were thinking.
Are there current portfolios that this would fit into, or are you thinking of creating?
No, they would have to be created. It would just be community, I think it would just be community funds. There isn't anything current at this point.
So the whole council be the interim board?
No, they can't because of the privacy nature. Again, there's components of this where somebody comes and asks for a loan or whatever it is out of the community funds, which is not, it shouldn't be public information. And anytime there's more than 2 people on the city council, it is a public meeting. So you can't keep that privacy nature of the EDC, of the community fund with more than 2 elected officials on.
So if you're looking for people to serve, when is their scheduled meeting?
Well, the only time the subcommittee would have to get together and review something is if somebody submits a request for use of those community funds. So it could be as needed, but at least with them being structured in the portfolios, we would know when a request comes in, who to contact.
So at this point, it's not scheduled every month?
No. And to be honest with you, it doesn't have to be portfolios. You guys could just designate, but I think it would make it kind of easier to remember to do it on an annual basis.
I'm willing to help.
Okay. Anyone else?
Do we need a motion to create the portfolio?
You need a motion, well, no, not to create the portfolios, but, so,
Create the subcommittee.
yes.
I move that we develop a subcommittee for the development of this community funds pending no EDC.
Yeah, to act as an interim board.
To act as an interim board.
Interim, yes, yeah. That was a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Mayor, whoever the 2 elected officials are, and Councilman Strand do his hat in there too, but initially, I'd like to be on that committee just because of my knowledge of the loan funds, the community funds, and I could help in that regard. Initially.
Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Okay, we have Councilman Strand is volunteering. Anyone else?
I think Kurt's volunteering to do it.
Is that a yes?
I
I can make this.
Steve is, okay. Oh, you're good. You want a nomination?
Yeah, I'll nominate Steve Tran and Kevin Gallagher.
I'll second that. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say. Motion carried. Congratulations, gentlemen. Oh, you made it, John.
I'll just really quickly add, at some point I'm gonna need to get together with you guys to do a privacy statement that they need at Western Township, so we'll just get together next week or so.
Mr. Schliemann, do we have to wait to the top of the hour, or can we go ahead?
No, I think we're fine. Typically in my public hearing notices, what I state is at or about 5 PM, so I think we're close enough, so.
Okay, so at this time, we'll recess our city council meeting and move to our public hearing facilities plan for 2024 water and sewer project, which is slated at 5 PM around and about. And we have Engineer Bob Freeman from Apex Engineering with us this evening. Remember, at our public hearing, we cannot take any votes. We'll do that after we move out of our public hearing. So, Bob, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, staff. Yeah, this evening what we have is I was here a while back, got authorization to do what's called a facilities plan for the Trunk Highway 59 and 108 utility improvements and surface improvements that are slated to start in 2024. I think we're all aware of the project. Been talked about for a good period of time now. So a facilities plan consists of preparing a preliminary engineering report. We do have to do an environmental information worksheet. We have to have a public hearing, and there's a bunch of additional documentation that Don and I have to complete. So this is one component of that process that we're going to cover this evening, which is the public hearing. And then once we're done with the public hearing, I will ask that the council pass a resolution accepting the preliminary engineering report as the facilities plan. That is required to be submitted with the entire packet or facilities plan packet. So I did provide the information that I'm going to present this evening to the city. Hopefully everybody's got a copy of it in your packet. I also provided a copy of the preliminary engineering report, the full preliminary engineering report. This is going to summarize what's contained in that PER document. So if I'm going to ask Don to go ahead and switch my slides here, I'm going to try to go through this fairly quickly. A lot of the information that I'm going to cover tonight needs to be included in my public hearing presentation per state statute. So again, public hearing for the facilities plan for the Trunk Highway 59 and 108 underground utility and surface improvements here within the city of Pelican Rapids. So project background. Again, a preliminary engineering report has been prepared to provide an evaluation of requirements to construct underground utility and surface improvements to portions of Trunk Highway 59 and the 108 corridors within the city of Pelican Rapids. I will say the document that I prepared, the preliminary engineering report, as well as this presentation, is mainly focused on the underground infrastructure that the city owns. Sanitary sewer collection system, water distribution system, the storm sewer collection and conveyance system, as well as the surface improvements. The heavy lifting on that is being done by MnDOT, since MnDOT owns these corridors. So tonight's presentation, a little agenda here. We're going to talk about the project areas, project needs, some various improvement alternatives, what the actual proposed improvements are, preliminary opinion of cost information, funding option, and then I'm required to put information on user rates in there. How accurate that is, I really question at this time. A lot of variables are going to affect those, but I need to put something in there. We'll get into that information in a little bit. So overall project areas. So this is basically a map showing the overall project areas. I tried to zoom out, show the overall community here. So basically 3 components or 3 areas. Number 1 is the Trunk Highway 59 corridor, runs north and south through the community. On the north end, the project's going to end around the County Road 9 intersection. On the south end, the project's going to end on the south end of the high school, which is actually 5th Avenue South. Trunk Highway 108 West, the overall surface improvements are going to extend out to 9th Street Northwest, and they're going to go from 9th Street Northwest to Trunk Highway 59. And then the third area of the project is Trunk Highway 108 to the east, That's going to extend from Trunk Highway 59 to a location approximately at the intersection of Ann Lane. So those are the overall project areas for surface improvements. The next slide is just the underground utility. And when I say underground utility, I'm talking again, the city's sanitary sewer collection and water distribution systems. Pretty similar. Trunk Highway 59 is from County Road 9 on the north down to Fifth Avenue on the south. The change that we have here is the city's underground utilities on Trunk Highway 108 West are only going to extend from Trunk Highway 59 out to 3rd Street Northwest. So that's a little bit shorter than the surface improvements they're going to go. And then to the east, again, the same project area basically as the surface improvements. We're talking Trunk Highway 59 out to the intersection of Ann Lane. Project needs. So wastewater collection infrastructure. Right now within the corridors of the areas that were shown on that previous map, the city has sanitary sewer collection infrastructure. So right now that mainline piping consists of vitrified clay pipe. I just put in here it's thought to be at least 60 years old. I have not seen any documentation showing the exact installation date of that infrastructure. I've heard the 1930s. I just assumed it was probably installed in the 1960s or prior. So I put approximately 60 years old. That sanitary sewer has cracked pipe, offset joints, and a lot of times you have tree root intrusions when you have this type of pipe and the age of that pipe. Moving on to the water distribution system infrastructure, again, thought to be installed approximately the same timeline, so let's assume that it's at least 60 years old. Consists of cast iron pipe, mainline piping right now. As a lot of you know, there's been some failures along those corridors as far as water main breaks, and then when you get to the infrastructure that's that old, a lot of times your valves, hydrants, things like that, they're unreliable. They're not reliable when the city staff wants to come along and operate those. If there's a fire, the fire department wants to hook up to them. A lot of times they don't operate correctly. And then surface and storm sewer infrastructure, to touch on that. Generally, it's in overall poor condition. Obviously, MnDOT is considering replacing it. And then, because we're proposing to replace the existing sanitary sewer and water systems, that surface infrastructure would have to be disturbed to reconstruct those pipelines, those service laterals, things like that. So, improvement alternatives. I'm going to kind of summarize here. I've broken them out by wastewater collection, water distribution, and then on the next slide, I've actually got the surface and storm sewer. Basically, there's three main alternatives typically that we look at when we do these types of projects. Number one is absolutely do nothing. That's an alternative. You could absolutely do nothing. MnDOT doesn't have to do anything. You could leave that infrastructure in place and then just deal with the failures as they come in the future. Number two, these days there's a lot of trenchless technology that can be utilized to rehab either sanitary sewer collection or water distribution infrastructure. Given the nature of this project, it's not a recommended alternative because of all of the service laterals that would have to be reconnected. There would be a lot of excavation required just to reconnect the service laterals if you do decide to rehab using trenchless technology, so that is not a recommended alternative. And then the final one is just simply the old traditional open excavation alternative where you actually bring the backhoes and equipment in, you dig down, you simply remove what's there right now, and you put in brand new. And that's being recommended for all the infrastructure on this particular project. And then this one is just simply the surface and storm sewer infrastructure. Again, you could absolutely do nothing or simply reconstruct what's there. And like I mentioned previously, in order to get down to that underground infrastructure, the surface, the curb and gutter, the street, sidewalk, things like that, that's all going to have to be disturbed. So again, the recommendation is simply reconstruct using traditional open excavation methods. So proposed improvements, pretty straightforward as we've done in other projects within the city of Pelican Rapids and a number of other communities. Wastewater collection infrastructure, that existing vitrified clay pipe is going to come out of the ground. We're going to put in brand new gasketed PVC pipe. Sanitary sewer service laterals are going to be reconstructed from the mainline pipe to the edge of the MnDOT right-of-way. And then we would replace the existing manholes with brand new precast concrete manholes, sealed lids, gasketed joints, things like that to minimize infiltration and inflow from getting into the city's collection system. Water distribution system infrastructure, again, utilizing PVC pipe to put in new mainline piping. We would install new service laterals from the main line to the edge of the MnDOT right-of-way. And then we would install new valves and hydrants where deemed necessary. And then surface and storm sewer, simply take up what's there right now and put in brand new as far as your storm sewer, curb and gutter, sidewalk, street, things like that. Preliminary opinion of cost. So I had put some costs together back in 2018 or 2019. Used pricing that we had at that time, but basically what I did is I put a 3% inflation factor and prorated it forward. So my original estimated cost, what I came up with back in, I think it was 2018 or 2019, using that criteria, prorated forward, was about $6 million. On February 11th, I think it was, I put a brand new estimate together. Don, I think I sent an email to Tom Pace today that had that date. I think it was the 11th. Using what we have for pricing right now. So what I did is I basically put together a preliminary opinion of cost. I put a 5% inflation factor on it, prorated that forward to 2024, and right now I'm coming up with about, for the city's underground utility, when I say underground utility, I mean sanitary sewer collection and water distribution system improvements, which includes construction, professional services, and a contingency. I'm at about $8.3 million today. Those of you that have been involved through these PMT meetings with MnDOT, you all realize that right now we are waiting for an estimated cost from MnDOT as far as what the city's surface infrastructure costs are going to be. So that would be items related to street, curb and gutter, sidewalk, multi-use trails, things like that. We're waiting for that information. So what I simply did for the purposes of this presentation, for the purposes of the preliminary engineering report that I have to get into to the MPCA by March 4th, I assumed that the surface improvement costs are going to be the exact same as the city's underground utility. So what I did is I basically just simply doubled whatever the underground utility improvement costs were going to be to come up with an overall estimated project costs, which include underground utility and surface. So right now, I plugged a number in there of just over $16.6 million. How accurate that is, to be honest with you, I don't really know at this time because we're waiting for estimated cost information from MnDOT for the city's surface portion. So I needed to put something in there. The good thing about PFA is next year, this project isn't going to happen until 2024. I can update these costs as we get closer to the project. So, anyway, funding. So right now, the main funding source that we're going to pursue is the Minnesota Public Facilities Authority. It is a public funding source for infrastructure improvement projects for cities, townships, state, whoever. Funding consists of low-interest loans along with principal forgiveness funds if projects qualify. So what we're going to do here is once we get hopefully better project cost information from MnDOT within the next month or so, I'm going to sit down, probably work with Don to take a look at, see if we think that the city is going to qualify for any principal forgiveness funds based on your financial situation that you're in right now. But until we get more information, it would basically be a waste of our time and effort to do that. So just to let you know where we're headed as far as the funding goes. With that being said, I think a lot of you have probably heard or aware of the federal stimulus money that's coming out. I'm going to a seminar next Wednesday to hopefully learn more about that. There's more and more information coming out on that all the time. There's a component in there about lead service laterals, things like that we're still gathering information all the time on and getting more knowledge on that. So a lot on the funding source to take place yet. So user rates. Again, like I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, I have to put something in here about estimated user rates. How accurate this information is very questionable. So obviously these improvements are going to result in additional annual debt service. So just running some quick numbers, I just put in here that the estimated additional annual sanitary sewer user rates would be $142 per year or $12 per month per equivalent dwelling unit. Basically single family household. For sanitary sewer, assuming the following. All sanitary sewer improvement areas are constructed at the same time, which on this project they will, as part of the same project. Funding consists of a 20-year loan at 1% interest rate. And then no project costs will be specially assessed. So Don and I had a meeting here, a discussion here recently, I think it was last week, about, this is a little bit of a unique project as far as special assessments go, so there's probably gonna have to be some dialogue and correspondence on if the city's gonna specially assess any of these improvements, and if so, how. So these are just some assumptions. So same thing with the water user rates, assuming the exact same thing, the estimated additional annual fee would be $151 per year per EDU, which equates to about $13 per month. Again, how accurate is this information? I can say not very right now. So, but I'm required to put something in here per state statute, so.
You can say, though, that every water user in town would come off of those lines, right?
Yeah, yes and no. There is some lines, I know, like say from the water treatment plant, that do go east, go back around behind the turkey plant, and then go south. So, I mean, if you look at your water distribution system, you know, obviously it's looped and there's piping going down a lot of streets, a lot of blocks. Is it the main thoroughfare, Steve, for your water source? Yeah, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna put the largest size pipe that the city of Pelican Rapids has in your community right down the Trunk Highway 59 corridor, and that's gonna be your mainline piping to basically feed a lot of the smaller pipes that go down the residential streets.
All right.
Yep. So in a way, you could look at it that way.
But also, whenever the city, per our assessment policy, to stick to that, whenever the city has replaced water and sewer lines, whether it's on one street in town or a section of town, it's always paid for through the rate structure for the whole community. So we might be doing a street project down on the southeast, but everybody's paying through it through the rate structure of the utility. Whenever we replace utilities. New ones, no. We always assess new stuff, new lines or blocks coming in, new subdivisions, that type of thing. But replacements are always built into the rate structure.
So to elaborate on that a little bit, obviously Don mentioned that anytime you've replaced sanitary sewer and water main lines in town, you assess 0% of those, $0 related to those. However, like service laterals, and then even the replacement of some of your surface and storm sewer infrastructure, they have been assessed in the past. So those are just some discussions that we're gonna have to have, but what makes sense in this case, I would say it probably is a unique project since it's your main thoroughfares through town, it's a downtown corridor. We're just gonna have some discussions.
Well, with that total cost, does that take in consideration that the water and sewer laterals, and everybody was gonna pay for that? With those utility rates?
My assumptions were that you were not gonna assess anything.
But that's a discussion we
Yeah,
had,
that's
Yeah.
because we've always have assessed the service laterals to the benefiting property.
Yeah. So again, those numbers, be very cautious of, like I said, there's so many things that are at play here as far as inflation, information coming back from MnDOT on what the city's surface improvement costs are that, I mean, there's a lot of things that are gonna change between now and 2024, so.
You'd have to plug these numbers in just to move forward.
I gotta put something in there as far as numbers, yep. So please understand that.
So the 8.3 million for the water sewer, there was, there was a lot of talk that, you know, oh, the state is going to save us so much money on the project because they're going to do the excavating. Is that 8.3 million, is that the total project, or is that less that wonderful savings from the state for their excavation, digging up the pipes? I mean, is that, you know what I mean? It's kind of weird, I'll ask the question, but is that 8.3 the total project, or is that just the materials? I mean, is it the...
So to hopefully answer your question, the 8.3 includes all the associated costs that I'm coming up with right now. That'll be all the costs that are associated with the sanitary sewer and water distribution system improvements, including material, excavation, if dewatering is needed, and professional services. When I say professional services, engineering, construction service related testing, things like that.
So when we were told that the state was going to be, since they're digging up the road anyway, and they're going to be, they would take on a portion of that, and potentially that 8.3 is going to be less.
No, no, what I did is everything related to the sanitary sewer and water main that I think is gonna be 100% city responsibility is included in that 8.3.
So an
So-
example might
go
be,
ahead.
like, when we get downtown, it's probably the best example. MinDOT, you know, if they want to do something with the storm system down there, then they would just dig down far enough to do that, plus that rebar concrete stuff, they're pulling all of that out of there. From that point down to get our pipes, that's what he's including. He's not including getting underneath that rebar concrete. MinDOT's taking care of that part of it. Otherwise, the number would be a lot higher. When you get further down, in some of the areas when we're not underneath that rebar concrete anymore, that MinDOT doesn't have any storm drain, that we are digging on. And they're not paying for it because they have nothing down there. Or they have infrastructure that they're gonna be replacing or dealing with, they will dig down to get to it. And the biggest thing is that rebar concrete.
So again, it just seems like when we passed this improvement, you know, we were being sold this bill of goods that, well, you know, the state is gonna cover a good portion of this excavation, and we just, oh, yeah, we gotta do it, but now it's, well, you know, they're only gonna do this part. So, again, it's too late now, but are we gonna, how much during this project are we gonna, well, the state's not gonna cover this part now, so it's just gonna be, is it gonna be continual of the state's gonna be backing up and our taxpayers are expected to step up?
The conversation with MinDOT has been, they will do a good portion of the surface improvements, not the excavation, other than the fact that they are gonna excavate that rebar concrete out of the downtown area.
Well, I beg to differ now because we were, when in that conversation, that's all we had heard is that, well, we gotta dig it up anyway, so we're gonna be digging the holes. And that's, unless I'm wrong, I mean, did you guys hear something different? Because that's all I heard was that, hey, we're digging the holes, we're moving the dirt. But now we're doing all this.
I was led to believe they were digging down far enough to take care of their
And
utilities.
then we were told, as long as we're digging, well, we're gonna move the dirt. And that's what we were sold, or at least that's what I bought into, as it was crammed down my throat by the rest. So, I don't know, again, here we sit. We bought into a project and now we're gonna be backing up on what's gonna get paid for, and it's gonna be twice what we thought.
Councilman Strand?
I guess I agree, Kevin. He told us, how many feet did he say, Tom said they were going down? Like, 4 feet or?
Yeah, and it'll depend on, so in these situations, typically, like Don had mentioned, is MinDOT comes in, they have the surface infrastructure. That's their infrastructure, the curb and gutter, the sidewalk, and the street. And then the storm sewer as well. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna remove all that infrastructure. All that's gonna be gone. If this was a city street project, obviously the city would be responsible for paying for removing all of that surface infrastructure and putting it back, 100%. In this case, MinDOT's gonna pay to remove most of it and put a lot of it back. The city will have some cost share in certain things, we're waiting for that information. And then everything below that infrastructure, whatever MinDOT has between the street, curb and gutter, sidewalk, and storm sewer, that would be city responsibility because you own the sanitary sewer collection system, you own the water distribution system. That's yours, not theirs. And what I did is my estimated cost at 8.3 includes everything once MinDOT removes the surface infrastructure, does the storm sewer stuff, everything in addition that needs to be done to replace the city-owned infrastructure is what's included in my 8.3. Now please realize this project is 2 years out. There's a lot of things going on there as well. This is my best estimate right now.
So my next question would probably be for Brian, but you're talking about replacing hydrants. Now, are any of the we've been on like a replacement, getting rid of our old hydrants, and aren't do any of those old hydrants fall into this corridor? Or again, that's probably a Brian thing.
It is. It's a Brian question. However, our standard practice is if there's any doubt that those hydrants should be replaced or need to be replaced when we're doing a project like this, especially in these types of corridors, we're going to replace them and put them in brand new. Now, if Brian has, let's say, replaced one recently, and it's fairly new, let's say it's maybe 5 years old, 10 years old, and Brian says, you know, I think that one's in pretty good shape yet, we can have those salvaged, and Brian can store them, and then if he wants to use that in another part of town, if another hydrant goes bad, he has the option to do that. But especially in this corridor with all the concrete, the sidewalk, the multi-use trails going in, what we can do to hopefully ensure that we don't have to dig that thing up in the near future, what we're going to do. And again, standard practice is to replace, if in doubt at all, replace those hydrants. So, yeah, good questions. Any other questions on anything?
I didn't understand that you referenced to doubling to 16 million. I got lost there.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Very good question. So what I did is I came up with an estimated cost of 8.3 million for just the city's underground utility infrastructure. And I know I had originally come up with about 6 million, what my estimated cost was. And I know, I believe, don't etch this in stone, I believe MnDOT had indicated that the city's portion of the surface improvements from about a 10,000 foot level was approximately going to be $6 million. So approximately doubled of what my underground utility infrastructure was. So for the purposes of this report, I came up with 8.3 for the sewer and water, and I said just to come up with a number for the city's portion of the surface improvements, I simply doubled that number again. I needed a number to put in there. Does that clear it up, Lou?
Okay, I think so, yeah.
So, again, it's an assumption. We're waiting for that information from MnDOT. The deadline for getting this stuff into the MPCA is March 4th. We're out of time. So, I need to put a number in. Like I said, the good thing is I can update these numbers in the years moving forward. These are not etched in stone. We don't submit these to the funding agency and they say, nope, these are your numbers, this is it. That's not the case. Please understand that. So. Yes, sir.
So, you have nothing to do with the storm drain. That's all MnDOT?
MnDOT is working on, MnDOT's consultants. Now, granted, our firm is involved in that team, but not our municipal group. I'm out of our municipal group. Our transportation group is working with KLJ, who's working with MnDOT to basically do all the surface and storm sewer improvement work design.
There might be some storm sewer stuff that we have to deal with in upsizing stuff that's not in the highway corridor, possibly.
Because they talked about a giant basin they treated before it was released in the river. I'm going, wow.
There was some discussion on that early on. Where that is exactly at right now, I'm not sure. I think they're running into probably a limited amount of space. The other thing that I think was assumed when we started this project is that there could possibly be a significantly more new impervious surface than there actually is going to be. So right now, the MPCA basically requires if you're doing a project and you create 1 acre or more of new impervious surface, you need to provide permanent stormwater treatment for that additional runoff. And the last that I had heard is basically as a result of this project, we're going to be right at maybe just over that 1 acre of new impervious surface. So the treatment requirements, I think, are a lot lower than what were originally anticipated they were going to be. So again, I'm not intimately involved in all that stuff. I'm just telling you what I'm hearing. There's a lot to be ironed out there as far as that design goes. So I don't know if that helps or hurts.
But then I heard too, it get probably bad out west. So.
Yeah, again, those details are to come and probably from a different group. So, yeah, they're very good questions. Yeah. Any other questions?
Where's a extra acre of impervious surface or surface coming from?
Just basically through the entire corridor. I know we're adding some sidewalks and stuff up on 59 to the north, especially on that west side. There's some multi-use trails that I believe are going to be wider than the sidewalks that are now. Again, I don't know those specific details, but those are just some things that I can think of, Steve, through the process.
All right.
So, yep, very good questions. I wish I knew more, but
So is that for the whole project or just?
for the as far as
The additional acre.
Yeah.
the additional acre, the entire project area. Yep.
So like up north where they're gonna, I'm assuming they're gonna put a multi-use path kind of on the road that's already there? In the same space, does that count as new surface or since it used to be tar?
No, if there's impervious surface there now, which impervious surface would be like bituminous and gravel or aggregate is also considered to be impervious. If there's impervious surface there now and they're putting impervious surface back, it is not considered to be new. It would have to be, let's say, concrete or bituminous going in a place right now that is green space or has grass. So, yep.
If north, we're looking at multi-use path behind the curve
Yep.
where there is no sidewalk now.
Yep. So I think it's on the west side of it would be off the street to the west side of 59, going up to that turkey plant area. So, yep. Good questions, good discussion. Like I said, I wish I knew more details. So, I guess if there's no further questions, I guess, like I said, I'll end my presentation here. Thank you very much for your time. And then the only other thing that I would ask is if you would consider passing the resolution that I believe has been included in your packet. So, thank you.
Any more comments or questions before we close the public hearing? Any more comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, the public meeting is now closed. We'll reconvene our city council meeting. And the resolution that Bob was talking about was in your package, resolution 2022-01.
Move adoption of resolution 2022-01.
We have a motion or second? Motion second, discussion, discussion, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Next item, and probably Robert can help us with this also, is a city-county garage utility extension agreement, which is in our packet. I think Don wants to speak to that.
Correct. Bob was a part of these discussions also, but we were trying to put together an agreement between the city and the county as it relates to putting in the water sewer extension up to the new county garage location on the northwest area of the industrial park. So in your packet was an agreement that was put together. This was originally drafted by the county attorneys, but the city attorney has also reviewed it. Between the attorneys, it was a quick review and a couple of suggested changes, and so this is a result of that. In a nutshell, the city will basically do all the necessary things that we typically would need to do with engineering, planning, engineering, financing, put the infrastructure in, and then we just submit the invoices as we get them to the county. The county has agreed that they would pay 100% the cost to get that infrastructure placed out to that location. And that's what this agreement reflects. Anything, Bob, that you can think of other than that needs to be discussed? Basically, it covers everything that we want to do and what they want to have done, and they're paying for it.
Yeah, as far as the agreement goes, yeah, that's from my understanding and we helped put it together as well. That's the agreement, is the county is going to pay for these improvements, and I know the county's anxious to get moving with the extension of the utilities. So why I'm here this evening again, and for as far as my second item on my agenda is, we've been working on preparing the plans and specifications for those utility extensions. So basically, it's extending sanitary sewer as well as water main down 430th Street to that site. What I would ask this evening is authorization from the council to go ahead and advertise for bids. Like I said, the plans and specs are nearly complete. We're in a position where we're ready to do that. Right now, we're hopefully looking at opening bids. We've got a date of March 16th. If we can hopefully get some good bids, award a construction contract in March or April, and then construct those improvements this year. One thing that I should note is right now, we've been told that the county is thinking about whether or not they want to pave that road. We did have a meeting with the county, the township, the city, representatives of our office a while back. I think everybody's on the same page. So what we're going to do as part of our project is basically reconstruct that 430th Street back to a gravel road. And then if the county wants to improve it in the future, that would be up to them. There was some discussions, Don, too, about having some type of agreement with the township, an easement or something, anything, and I believe you're probably working on that with the city attorney. So there's a lot of things moving here, a lot of moving parts, but from our aspect, like I said, we're ready. If the council's fine with it, go ahead and get authorization to advertise for construction bids.
I know we have our city attorney, Lindsay Forsman, with us. Lindsay, do you have anything to add to the discussion?
No, not really. I looked through the agreement, and like Don said, I kind of gave my own proposals of suggested changes. The final product looks good to me, and we are working on that easement, putting that together with the township.
Thank you.
I move that we enter into the agreement for the utility extension with Southern County on 430th Street and put it up to the top.
Second that.
Motion second, discussion.
I have a question, Don, and this is, I'm not saying we should do this, I'm just asking, but what would be the downside of annexing that street so we don't have to worry about an easement and just make it all city street?
Other than when stuff has to be done to it, it's 100% city. I don't see any downside unless the township doesn't want to give up a portion of it.
Do your repair costs, maintenance.
Yeah.
Councilman Foster?
Has the county looked at any of the changes you made to that agreement?
I don't know.
Yes. She had two main changes that they want implemented, and they were both put in. So they made her changes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
So this is to their liking at this point?
Yes. The county's already, the commissioners have already approved and signed off on it, so.
Okay.
Will you describe the easement again?
Because we're digging down the center of that road to put the pipe in, we're gonna be disturbing the north side of that, the north lane of that gravel road, which is township property, not city property. So we're just getting into a construction easement during the construction period. We're putting an easement together that the township would be okay with for us to go in there and actually do the work that we need to do. So that's all it is.
You're talking about 430th, right?
Correct.
Why only one side? I don't get.
The township has the north side of the road and we have the south side because that's the separation between city boundary and township. It's the same way on golf course road. On the other side where it's paved going down to the golf course, the city has the south side, the township has the north side. Right now, as far as snow and maintenance, we take care of the golf course side road there, we plow it and all that stuff, and the township takes care of the snow and everything on the gravel side. So if we took that road, basically that would change. We might, if we're looking at doing that and talking to them about taking that road over from them, if they would allow us to do that, we also have to talk about the golf course side. Otherwise, it's complicated. That's what the easement's for.
And does the sewer run all the way to 59?
No. To 9, you mean? No. No, it's only coming out. So the easement really is only necessary from the intersection of the 430th and Industrial Park Boulevard going to the west.
Yeah, so in the agenda that I prepared, as part of that, I actually put a map in there showing, and actually, we're just going to extend sewer and water off of Industrial Park Drive. So at the intersection of Industrial Park Drive and 430th Street, there is sanitary sewer and water main to that location. And we're just going to basically extend them west from that intersection.
I was looking at the map, and it looked like it was up like,
Yep.
Any other questions? Any other questions? We do have a motion and second, so. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 9, Explore Minnesota Tourism Affiliated Welcome Center Program, MOU 2022 to 2026. Don.
Yeah, this is the other one that you guys wanted to kind of extend from last meeting to this meeting. And so, again, this agreement is regarding the historic city hall, which is also the state tourism center. There was that added language put in the new agreement that they want to put in place as it relates to vaccination and testing requirements that the city would have to monitor, pay for if there's a cost associated with weekly testing of anybody that hasn't been vaccinated, but also we will be required to make sure that we have a copy of anybody's vaccination record, and we would maintain that in the case of a state audit. I did speak to Nick Leonard regarding this because they obviously are the ones that are manning the facility when it's open from 8 October. And Nick just informed me that the county doesn't have any vaccination or testing requirements for county employees. So, that was one of the questions I had. So it would make it a little bit easier if they already had that in place and they were doing that at the county level, but they are not. So, initially doesn't affect them at all, other than the fact that if the council approves the agreement or the MOU, then I would just be working with Nick to make sure whoever they have manning it down there is vaccinated or they are tested just like anybody else that we put in down there, as volunteers or anything else. So that's kind of where I think what we were at. The only piece of information we didn't have last meeting was my discussion with Nick.
Again, can you tell us the downside of not agreeing to this MOU?
Well, the downside of not agreeing with it would be that any place that the state advertises, does any advertising nationally beyond the U.S. borders, maybe to some extent Canada, Mexico, maybe even Europe, I don't know. But in those publications that the state does, because we're a tourism location or a tourism site, Pelican Rapids is mentioned in them, so we would lose all of that advertising. We would lose it this year, I don't know. I would suspect that they've already got all the brochures and everything put together, since this actually goes into effect retroactive to January 1st, 2022 through 2026. I would think that they already have the material done. But again, we would eventually fall out of the publication. Like we talked about before, do we know how many people are coming here and visiting the tourism center because they saw it in the state publication? We don't know that. But there is also the possibility that if somebody's out in the lakes area and they're aware of that the state has tourism center location, there's a potential that they'll look up to see where the nearest one is, and then run in here potentially to look and see what advertisements or publications the state has in it. So, but we don't know if that happens either.
If we don't enter into the MOU, will the county still stand on it?
Oh yeah, the county has nothing to do with this. This is strictly between the city and the state tourism center, or the tourism board. That's all it is. The county, what they do for us is just an agreement between the county and the city for them to keep the doors open for non-tourism purposes. They just do it because they want to have somebody in there.
So that was the downside of not agreeing, and the downside of agreeing would be we're going to have to pay for the testing, which at this point we don't know how much it's going to cost.
Well, I think that right now it's still, everybody can get I'm thinking can still get tested on the government's dime, but I don't know that for sure. And if that is the case, how long will it continue before gun requirements go away?
These mandates are disappearing rapidly, and I do not support it.
You have such a hard time getting volunteers for things like this. They're just
More
development
government,
on other.
more government is not.
You know, I think I mentioned it last time too, is there is an out of this, so we could always basically, get into the agreement, and then if we do have issues or concerns or something pops up to make it problematic, we could always, I think it's a 30-day written cancellation, and we can terminate. The other thing that I said, mentioned last time too, is the reason we have the handicap parking places downtown where they are is the one in front of Historic City Hall was there because that was a requirement of us being a tourism center. They wanted a handicap parking spot there, and then the city decided at the time to put the other one on the other side of the river on the bridge so that it wasn't creating any potential issues for business owners that want, that need parking or would like parking in front of their stores. So that's why the other one was put on the bridge on the west side.
So if we didn't agree.
So if we didn't agree with it,
handicap parking
you can
spots,
do whatever,
we
you can do whatever you want with the parking lot.
could relocate.
Well, they can do it.
Huh?
It could be that.
Yeah, or they could do that,
Sure.
yeah.
You'd just be open to council to decide what they want to do with it. Right now, you cannot move the one in front of Historic City.
So do I hear a motion to accept or deny?
I move that we opt out of the MOU with Explore Minnesota Tourism.
Motion second. Discussion? Discussion?
What are the downsides of doing that?
Well, eventually, we won't show up in literature and publications that the state of Minnesota puts out regarding, regarding tourism locations, tourism centers, because we are considered a tourism center. So that would be a downside.
Is this something we act on every year? I mean, is this?
No,
Will this be presented again next year?
This agreement basically goes from 2022 all the way through 2026. The last one we had in place, I don't know, I think there was one that was agreed upon, but there was no end date on, or if there was, it was 1 year, so they were thinking that maybe they would come back each year, but then it just wasn't on their back burner or whatever, they just forgot to even deal with it. And so when they decided they needed to upgrade the agreements, they added the language in it at that time and set a 4-year or 5-year term on it.
Any more discussion?
Let me just add one more thing I think I mentioned last time. I asked her about, there's 60 of these locations in Minnesota. When I talked to her before the last meeting, she had only gotten 30 of them back. So about half of them, she had received them back, all signed the agreements or whatever. She hadn't heard of anybody else that was thinking about opting out. And I asked her, if you opt out, can we get back in when COVID disappeared? And she said, usually, in the past, when a city opted out of being a tourism center, they could not get back in. But she said that's something that the state is going to have to think about because of the whole vaccination issue with COVID and everything else. So if we opt out, can we get back in? Don't know.
Did she say how many of these other cities are opting out?
She said no other cities, the 30 that she received back, they'd all signed the agreement. The other half that she hadn't gotten back yet, she hadn't heard one way or the other. If there were some that were going to opt out, or if there was any that decided to opt out, I was the first conversation she had regarding anybody thinking about opting out because of the vaccination mandate.
Okay, we do have a motion second on the floor to opt out of the Explore Minnesota Tourism Affiliate Welcome Center Program, MOU. There you go.
Yep. Strand. Ballard. Foster.
Nay.
And Fraser.
Aye. Okay, motion passed to opt out. Item number 10, ordinance defining library employee compensation. There was a copy of that in your packet, and I believe there was a written copy handed to you this evening on your desk. Don, you want to speak to that, please?
Yeah, so the reason this came about, or how this came about, was with all the discussion we've had regarding COLAs, library employees, city employees getting raises, the library city employees not getting raises until later in the year, whatever. There was always the concern of what effect it would have on pay equity, basically. And so eventually, after the last couple of years in 2019, and actually what kind of prompted it too was knowing that we were going to have to report pay equity this year, I finally decided to meet with the city attorney. It wasn't a bad thing for me to meet with the city attorney just to kind of give her an idea of some of the discussions that have been had anyway. But in meeting with the city attorney and discussing the issues that we've kind of all been a part of the conversations of, she was going to do some research and look and see if there was a way that we could deal with COLAs and that type of thing from an ordinance standpoint or otherwise. And so, and obviously the city attorney's here tonight, she can speak of whatever research she did. But from my understanding, there was, from meeting with her, is yes, the Minnesota rules and statutes do allow the library board to set compensation for library employees, but they do not define compensation. So to try and find a way to fix, I'll say fix a concern, a potential problem, because I can tell you, if something isn't done, and there's more discussions to have, but if something isn't done, the city will not pass pay equity in 3 years and we got to do it again. So somehow we've got to find some solution to what we believe is the potential problem between library employees, city employees that are the library employees that are city employees, and how we saw raise the COLA. So the city attorney did some research, and as I understand it, and Lindsay might be a better one to speak on, but there was nothing in the statutes that defined compensation. So she said the city council can define compensation as it relates to the city code. So that's what this is. It's adding a new piece to the ordinances, basically defining compensation for the purposes of library employees. And in reviewing this and talking to the city attorney about it, we think this is the first step in possibly fixing this COLA, when they get COLAs, when there's a conflict between what benefits city employees get and what benefits library city employees get. This is to get everybody on the same page. That's what it's about. Lindsay, do you want to, do you have anything to add to that?
Lindsay, can I address the microphone, please?
Yeah, you bet.
So everybody can hear you.
All right, so pretty much everything Don said I would agree with. The goal of the ordinance as it's drafted within your packet is not to take any powers from the library. As the city is aware, the library board has its own powers and its own special portion of the code. kind of governing what it can and cannot do. And then one of the issues, as I understand it, has been that ambiguity of what does compensation mean? The goal is to ensure that the city remains compliant with pay equity because at the end of the day, library employees are still city employees. So by making it clear that we just want to make sure that nothing the library board does conflicts with the city code, I think that is a step in the right direction for ensuring that the city stays compliant with the pay equity.
So one of the things that I've mentioned before, and it just seems to not make any sense from a pay equity standpoint, is if the city employees have wage scales, which they all do, that the city council has put in place, I just can't understand why or how the Minnesota statutes would allow another board that has their own powers, but then powers would allow that other board to set somebody's wages outside of those scales that were set by the city council if they are in fact city employees. And everybody agrees they're city employees. So that's why I wanted Lindsay to look into this, because I think, and this is just me speaking, and unless somebody can show me the logic in it being different, the city council sets the scales. And I believe the library board has the authority to set the compensation for their library employees, for those library employees, but they got to do it within the scales approved by the city council. So they can start them wherever they want. They can start them at step 1, they can start them at step 5, or level 6. They have the authority to do that, but I believe they have to stay within the scales. And so that's always been the big question. They can set it, they have the right to set it, but they have to do it within the scales approved by the city council. And in this particular case of the city scales that we're dealing with right now, the city council set them, the library board also played a role in approving them through that whole wage study effort that we went through. So it's about maintaining those, and if they want to go beyond those, they have to somehow do that with the assistance or with adjustments approved by the city council. And that's what this ordinance is talking about.
When you speak of scale, you're talking about the range of compensation.
The range of compensations that was approved for all city employees.
So if we just don't pass this, say forget it, what happens if we don't pass pay equity? I mean,
if you don't pass pay equity, then whatever caused you to fail it, you have to fix it. And it's going to mean that, well, I can tell you, looking forward to 2020, 3 years from now, one of the positions probably is going to be based on COLAs is probably going to be outside that scale. So pay equity is going to say, you've got to get back in compliance. The only way you're going to get back in compliance is to pull that scale back, or you're going to have to adjust everybody in the city up so that that pay equity passes. So everybody gets an adjustment because one person went out, or you bring that one person back in. So again, I think this is an attempt to just stay away from that type of thing. Having said that, though, we did that wage study in 2016. It's probably, in light of all the things that are going on with wages and everything else throughout the U.S., it's probably time to look at doing another wage study. But that's above and beyond. I mean, that's something just to throw out there. That this is something to try and correct potential issues, and this should keep us in line with pay equity.
So if we fail pay equity, is there a monetary fine?
Yeah, sorry, probably should have mentioned that. What pay equity will do is possibly hold back LGA until we're in compliance, until we pass.
Councilman Friend?
Would this require a change if we pass it this year, for example?
Well, that's something that and you guys have to answer that question. I don't know, because it does speak about the benefits and everybody being on the same level. And right now, the library employees, the part-time employees get a benefit that other part-time employees don't get, which is holidays, paid holidays. So you either look at, my intent in doing this was not to take any benefits away from anybody that already is getting benefits, but that's a council decision. So whether you remove benefits that are there now, or whether you say, you know, when that position is vacated and you hire somebody else, that new person coming in as a part-timer does not get that benefit. They get the same benefit everybody else gets. That's a council decision, because they're getting benefits now. And I don't know, based on this, I guess the question would be, can the library board say, no, we're not going to do that, as it relates to compensation? If we're defining compensation, then I guess that's a question that...
But by passing this ordinance, we're not taking any benefits away from library employees at this point.
Based on what how you read this would suggest that you're basically making everybody equal. But in
Suggest?
Well, it
He gave
says
us
that.
two options on how we can handle it.
Yeah.
Well, it says in here that I think the way it reads, that compensation, when the library board is determining or setting compensation of current and/or new employees, compensation of the library employees may not conflict with or be contrary to any sections of the city code as it relates to compensation, including compensation and benefit packages with respect to full and part-time employees. That says all part-time employees either get or don't get holiday pay. It's one or the other. They either do or they don't. But because we already have the situation where the library employees are getting holiday pay, the council is going to have to probably, if they want to leave it that way, is going to probably have to at least address that at this time. And like I said, you can leave it there for now, but when a position is vacated for the time being and they hire somebody else, then they get the same thing everybody else does. Or you can make that a benefit for all city employees that are part-time.
We have David Gottenborg here from the library, who I think he would like to address this.
I really wasn't planning on coming here tonight. But I looked at the packet, as I do sometimes, and I saw this. And so just so I can come up to date, and then I'll answer some of your questions too, and I have some thoughts here. Who authored this?
The city attorney.
Did you write this? Is this your document then? Okay. And does the council, the people sitting here, did they know you had the authority to go out and do this? In other words, when I was on the council for 12 years, oftentimes we would talk to the administrator and we'd say, we'd like you to pursue something. In fact, at our library board, or when I was on the park board, if we have a request, we make a motion, it's seconded, and that's forwarded to the council. Is the council aware that he is working in that direction? Was there any, because I've watched your meetings and I was surprised at this because I've seen really no council direction or any action on your part to authorize Don to move in this direction. So I can simply ask each one of you. Kevin, his portfolio is the library. Were you aware of this prior to tonight? It's simple, yes or no. I mean.
No, it's not a simple yes or no, because yes, we were aware that we were working through the pay equity issue.
Yeah.
And this has continuously been a pay equity issue. So yes, in that respect, we knew that he was looking for a way to correct the situation.
Okay. I think there should be council action, on record, that has Don move in a certain direction. For example, there was a packet, perhaps the packet prior, we got a letter from Lindsay, I don't have that letter with me, I have a copy on my phone, where Don met with Lindsay. Was the council aware that Don had Lindsay write a letter to the library board looking for certain items that were held within the library, personnel files? Are you aware of that? You are. Were you aware of that?
Was I aware that he had addressed?
Yes.
To write a letter?
Yes.
No.
Okay, Steve, were you aware?
No.
Steve?
Yeah.
Okay. There should have been council action on that portion. Has Don given the council any background on the state statutes? Do you understand the state statutes?
David, I don't know where we're going.
I'm going with this because,
Don's not on trial, so.
no, I am, because it is kind of an odd thing to come out of the blue. But I'll read this here. And when you get to the last minute, it says, further, we read the first portion, the library board shall not set any policies or have anything within its bylaws which conflicts with the city code, and the library shall not make any pay scale adjustments without the approval of the city council. But clearly, when we start reading Minnesota state statutes, I'm going to pull it up here. Anything that you would do like this goes contrary to state statutes, because it says, well, I can read parts of it. It shall have exclusive control of the expenditure of all money collected for or placed to the credit of the library fund. If interest is earned, such and such. All money received for the library should be paid into the city or county treasury credit a library fund, kept separate from other money or city. The library board shall compound in. So the last statement on here would go against state statutes. This, as it sits right now, as Lindsay prepared this ordinance would go against state statutes. It doesn't apply. But I tell you what I think would apply, and this is a suggestion I've had from sitting on the library board. As I've sat and listened before when we've lost an employee or bring on a new employee, we have to take information that, for example, that Viking provides with us, Annie is certainly in a network with other librarians, and then the experience of the people on the board. And a wage is set. Now, Don, I think as a city administrator, has a full idea. I would assume that you know when we're looking for an employee, it's posted in the newspaper and whatnot. I think I would welcome some direction from the council as far as a pay scale, but this sometimes requires communication, and that's what doesn't happen. Because if you pass this ordinance, who's qualified here to set someone's pay from the library? Don isn't qualified. You're qualified. You have no background. What he would need to do is he would have to talk to Viking, he would have to talk to libraries, he would have to talk to Annie and say, where are you sitting? Where are you sitting? Where do you want to bring this person on? But that isn't done even now. But it could be done, and it would solve a lot of issues. So if someone came and we were going to hire someone, and Don got a hold of Annie and said, where are you sitting? What are you thinking about? Here, we have a pay scale that we want you to consider to keep us within the pay equity. Case solved. Our library board, we're responsible, mature enough that we would look at that, take that information, and try to work within the city's guidelines. But that type of stuff doesn't happen.
No, but Dave, you did get pay scales. You have pay scales.
Yeah.
Because you guys approved the pay scales on the wage study in 2016. And those are the, so the pay scales that you.
Yeah, we're already up to 2021.
Yep.
But as this ordinance stands, as Lindsay prepared this document, this does not in any way, this does not supersede the Minnesota state statutes. You'd have to read that. If he hasn't given you the state statutes, you shouldn't even be voting on something like this.
The city council has gotten the state statutes, those rules before in the packets, and also as we've talked about this stuff, but also Lindsay reviewed them and looked at them. She had copies.
Well, I just read them here, and if you sign this document, you take out the fiscal responsibility of the library board as it comes to compensating wages. The way this is written, you sidestep that. That can't happen. As this is written, you would take the library board out of their fiscal responsibility, and that violates Minnesota statutes, and that's not going to happen. So you have to go back, if you want to work on this, this could be a working document, but it's not close yet. You can't.
So Don just said that you received the pay scales. So you have the pay scales down at the library?
I would assume we have, but that was too.
Has any other pay scales been created by the library?
Not that I'm aware of, no. We can fit a person in based on their experience at a set area.
So there has been no additional pay scale created at the library?
No. Except for the COLA increase, where in the past is what I can relate, and it's year after year. We wait usually, the police department goes through through negotiations. From there, the city employees get a COLA increase, and usually the library board follows that.
How many part-time employees are at the library right now?
2.
Councilman Foster, your question?
I don't have a question, but when we set this up way back in 2016, the city came up with a pay scale, the library came up with their own pay scale, and it was said then that those differences between the two pay scales would result in inequity farther down the road, and that's where we're at now.
I don't know if we're at that right now. I think that Don is saying that 3 or 4 years from now, we could be at that again. But if the city has something that is updated as far as wage scales that we're not aware of, yes, we'd be interested in seeing that.
Because of the fact that I was going to be reporting pay equity, I requested the pay scale from the library because I wanted to make sure that basically everybody was still within the pay scale set from the 2016 and going forward.
So Dave, was that appropriate that he do that?
Pardon now?
Was that appropriate that he asked for the pay scales while he was working on pay equity?
Absolutely not, no.
I can't ask the library what your pay scales are, so I can...
No, I said absolutely yes. You should be able to ask them, absolutely.
So...
Yes.
So I did that because I wanted to make sure when I reported pay equity that, because I have to report what their scales are basically, on a monthly basis. And when I got them, there was a scale that was created different than, all the library employees that were down there were basically rated the same under the wage study. Outside of the janitors, but the 3 main positions were all in the same scale. And when I received the scale, one position, which, not all part-time, sorry, because the 3 employees down there were all rated the same, whether they were part-time or full-time. But there was the full-time position was basically put on their own scale, outside of the scale that was approved by the council and the library board at the time. So when I saw that, and using those numbers, basically you could see that based on where COLA's potentially could go within the next 3 years, that person's probably going to jump out of the scale that the city approved. I don't go by what the library board approves for scales. I go by what the city approved because that's what we're supposed to do for pay equity. But that scale will go out in 3 years.
And I'm speaking for myself on the library board, just simply being sensitive and sensible about this. If you have insight as to a particular position that would go outside of it, I would like you to make that known to our library board. We welcome you to attend, and we can kind of make a correction here. But getting back to this, as it is written, this is not an ordinance right now that you can pass because it goes simply against the grain of the statute, Minnesota state statutes.
Okay,
the world is not going to end tonight as far as pay equity.
Linda, do you want to speak to that again?
I can, yeah.
And it isn't. It's
Get to the microphone. Dave, I hear what you say, and I respectfully disagree. The statute that you're looking at is Minnesota Statute 134.11 Subdivision 2. As I stated when I initially explained this ordinance that was drafted, it's not designed to take away any power from the library board, nor is it designed to tell them what they can and cannot do. I mean, if you read, language is very specific. It's kind of a, it's a term of art. The library board shall not make any pay scale adjustments without the approval of the city council. It's kind of designed to...
Well, that takes away the power of the library board.
Our city code is mirrored after Minnesota Chapter 134, which is what specifically puts library board powers, duties into place. The board, or the statute does talk about fiscal responsibility, about expenditures, about being in charge of that money. We're not telling the library board what they can and cannot do with their money with this ordinance. What we're trying to do is facilitate that communication that Dave is talking about to make sure that everyone is on the same page as far as pay scale before any adjustments are made. The library board is still has the power to set established compensation with pay scales in mind, as it's always done. But when it comes to pay scale adjustments, the city checking in with the library board, vice versa, to ensure that everything is in compliance with pay equity is the goal here.
I would rest on this. I think where this is probably going is that the clerk, do you have pay equity scales?
I do not.
Okay. I believe, as I'm thinking here, I think we accepted the city's pay scales, the 2016. I don't think we're working on a separate set of scales. Are you?
You use those basically, but at some point, and I don't know when it happened, and I didn't even know it happened until, like I said, I wanted to make sure that when I was going to report pay equity, that I was going to be reporting correctly. So I requested the scales from the library, through Wayne, and I got their scales. And in the scales, one of those positions the three are supposed to be the same. One of them, the full-time, was pulled out and they were on their own scale. It's a higher scale.
Okay. I'm not aware of that. I thought...
When I discovered that, basically, got done reporting pay equity and everything, and the mayor and I did request a meeting with Wayne Runnigan. He came up, sat down with us. We talked about just stuff in general, but we specifically talked about that scale too. Because my concern was, and I wanted him to be aware that with that scale, more than likely we are going to fail pay equity if we don't somehow look at how we can correct that. And at the end of that meeting, it was my understanding that we would be having further discussions about how that scale was created, why it was created, and what has to be done to fix it.
Okay, well,
That's where we're at.
then I'm open to that type of a discussion. However, I strongly disagree with Lindsay's assessment of the state statutes, where this as it's written right now goes against the state statutes because we do not have fiscal responsibility. It's based on city council approval. And it's not going to hold up.
I guess I would say we put our, as a city council, we put our trust in the city attorney. So that's where I would stand. Council have any questions or comments?
One comment I would make is it is kind of an area that's a little fuzzy, just because, yes, the library board is given its own duties and powers, but as I stated earlier, at the end of the day, the library employees are still city employees. It's sort of implied that, you know, the smaller the body, it's not going to conflict with the bigger bodies. You know, city law can't conflict with county law can't conflict with state law, so on and so forth. So I think it can be interpreted that anything the library does should be in compliance with what the city is doing anyway. The purpose of this ordinance is just to make sure that everybody is on that same page, to try to give some guidance to everyone involved and making sure that everybody stays within the same realm as far as compensation. If it would make the city council more comfortable, I can certainly send this off to the League of Minnesota Cities for a second opinion. But I had worked with the League of Minnesota Cities in doing this research and putting this together.
My question was, would this require any change like this year? I didn't really, did I get an answer down?
It's not designed to change anything as it stands. I think the goal is to make sure that going forward, you know, if a part-time city employee is there now and has benefits, it is sort of up to the city council if you're going to try and take that away. This specific ordinance does not do that. What this does is, as Don kind of said, if that part-time employee no longer is employed and that position is filled by someone else, those benefits wouldn't extend. Does that answer it a little better?
Well, I feel like we're at risk too if we're treating them differently, even when it's done that way. I don't know. I worry.
That's kind of what you hear the term grandfathered in. You know, you can't pass a law retroactively. You can't say that, you know, at the lake, you got to change everything just because the county says you got to do this now. The hope, the goal of the ordinance is to avoid problems down the line.
I move to accept the amendment 206.03 to subdivision 5A of the city code.
Have a motion second? Motion second, discussion?
Can I ask one, Ed? Just so everybody's, I've heard a lot tonight about what the part-time employee is. This was enacted a very, very long time ago. I think it cost our library just probably a little over $1,000 a year. And what it does, it really is, I've had a business where I've had what I call part-time, full-time employees, people that are not working full-time, but they're part-time, but you depend on them. They're there, they always work full-time. And what it does is, if someone is working 20 hours a week, and that's their part-time, their full-time, part-time, 20 hours a week, and their work date lands on July 4th, where the library is closed, that person loses 8 hours. All we're doing is we have a couple employees that have been with us a very, very long time. I should say what we are doing, what was in place when I came onto the council. It's basically compensating that employee for being a long-term, full-time, part-time employee. And it is not a huge amount of money. I mean, it is not a lot of money. And I understand the fact that you've got part-time employees here that don't benefit in that, but this goes back a long time. I believe we looked at something, and it went back as far as when Al Grothy was on the library board. So I don't think that that has to be a deal breaker, and I want to clarify that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any more discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 12, hazardous waste day, and there's a pamphlet in your packet. Ron, do you want to address that?
Yep, it's the same agreement we have every year with the county where they come up and have their mobile collection for helping with waste. And the day will be August 8th from 10 to 2. And all the city has to do is provide a plate, which we're making up at the Public Works building. And 4 to 5 people to help, and then the city provides food and water and stuff, and that's the day. Any questions?
I wish they'd change the date a little bit each year.
What's the date
It's the same week every year.
It is, it's the first weekend, August 8th, it's the first week in August. And I think, you know, because they go to all these other communities, so I'm assuming everybody just wants to keep theirs the same.
I think they find if they keep the same date in the same city every year, first weekend of August, they get a better turnout because people always can expect it's going to be that week.
So do I hear a motion to enter into a contract with mobile collection for household hazardous waste with Buttercup County?
Yes, you do.
Thank you.
I'll make that.
Second?
Yes.
Motion second, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Item number 14, administrator report. Doug.
Since the last meeting, I held a department head report, worked with the city clerk to set the agenda and prep for the meeting. I met with the DNR, Houston Engineering, and Street Park Superintendent Ron Olson to discuss the plantings on the city property or potential plantings on the city property once the dam is removed and things start kind of drying up and growing around the river edges. We looked at different species of trees, and Brian got what the list that the DNR has, so you could kind of start taking a look at that. I had a conference call with our labor attorneys, Flaherty and Hood, regarding employee issues. I attended the MnDOT's 2024 monthly virtual meeting and met with the mayor, Councilman Foster, people service staff to discuss the city's draft chloride schedule that needs to be submitted to MPCA at the end of February. I have to probably submit it on Friday is my goal. We're going to be meeting again on Thursday. Take one last look at that draft schedule. That's all about reducing chloride in the city. It's not just necessarily at the plant. I met with the mayor and Councilman Ballard to discuss the city code that you guys considered tonight. Held a virtual meeting with the mayor, the police chief, Statham, and Senator Engelbretson regarding public safety personnel and the issue that the city's been having, or have had, or is continuing to have. It's kind of an ongoing issue right now. Discuss the community funds with a potential requester, and that's what kind of drives this whole creating a subdivision of the EDC or a subcommittee, because we have somebody that wants to make a request for some funds, and we can't do anything with the EDC inactive. I held a meeting with the city staff regarding the alert system, kind of a training thing, I know. When we had the water main break, I was the one that set the alerts out, and it was just to get together again and cross-train. We've all been cross-trained, and we've all, kind of went through 3 different alert systems, so it was more about getting cross-trained again so anybody can send them out that needs to, and just refresher. It was a refresher, basically. I attended the annual fire department meeting between the city and the townships, and then drafted and helped in I drafted letters for the renewal contracts because the 10-year service contract with the township is expiring at the end of this year. So we want to have new agreements, 10-year agreements in place. So I drafted a letter and kind of arranged to have all that stuff mailed out. Met with the school superintendent and Apex Engineering and Brian Olson to talk about the realignment of the school's access on Highway 59 up on the east side of the school, how it comes off of 59 right now, bringing it back and lining it up with 4th Street. So we talked about that, and then I also submitted the city's quarterly airport stormwater report to the state. My report.
Any question for Don? Don, thank you. Item 15, mayor report, a few items that I've been associated with, most of them Don already spoke about. I did attend a 2024 Complete Street Steering Committee meeting here at City Hall by Zoom technology with Administrator Sullivan and Superintendent Olson. Attended that same fluoride reduction meeting here at City Hall with Councilman Foster, Administrator Sullivan, Kerry Gamble, and Greg Stang on People Service. Attended a February 10th meeting with Councilman Ballard and Administrator Sullivan regarding the ordinance we passed this evening defining library employee compensation. I attended that February 14th Zoom meeting here at City Hall with Administrator Sullivan, Chief of Police Statham, and Senator Ingebretson via Zoom regarding police matters. On February 16th, attended the Pelican Rapids Fire Department Annual Township meeting at the Fire Hall. Attended the February 17th Local Foods, Local Places Steering Committee meeting via Zoom. I also attended last Friday the Lake Region Electric Cooperative Energy Forum by Zoom. That was supposed to be an in-person meeting, but they went to Zoom technology because of the storm we were receiving at that time. And then met today with Administrator Sullivan to review the agenda for this evening's City Council meeting. Okay, seeing no other business, is there a motion to adjourn? Second? Motion second, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Meeting adjourned.